Okay, Elaine, we are live. You can go ahead and get started with the panel if you guys can hear us.
Okay, great. So wonderful to have everyone here today to talk about a topic that is very relevant for us right now in these times. And our industry has a great opportunity regarding omnichannel content and our effectiveness in what we say, when we say it, and how we say it. And we have a panel of subject matter experts here to give their perspective on how we can leverage omnichannel content more effectively as an industry. Nick, Lou, and Marie can introduce themselves, and you've just heard I'm Elaine Gamble. I'm with Otsuka Pharmaceuticals as Director of Digital Strategy. We're just going to jump right in. We've got some questions for the panelists to share their insights and wisdom with the audience. So I'm just going to jump right into our first question. How have customer expectations changed during COVID-19? And how does this shape the way we create content and engage with our markets? Nick, do you have a perspective on that?
Sure. Thank you, Elaine. Hi, everyone. I'm Nick Portillo. I lead digital media and analytics at Fingerpaint. We're a full service agency within the pharma space. So to answer that question, I think back to the very beginning when all this occurred in March and how much things have changed and how much we've acclimated ourselves so quickly. It's actually quite interesting to think how different it was in the very beginning, and our expectations were very low on pretty much everything. And now here we are, and I think we've really become much more in tune with how to adapt to this new world we're living in. And I think content is really no different. If anything, we've seen such an increase in all of the information that exists because of everything. I think the expectations now have quickly shifted into now how can I really get the information that's most relevant to me, and I think that's where we need to be that much more in tune with what our customers are looking for.
Absolutely. Lou, your thought.
Before I do that, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Lou Marstechnik, and I am the head of worldwide omnichannel experience at Bristol Myers Squibb. And what does that mean is that we are the business owner of the majority of non-personal touch points, everything from web, mobile, social, to content capabilities, etc. But Nick, I really liked what you said and do want to build off of that. And if you take a step back and you look at COVID-19, what did that really introduce and what did that mean for us? And looking at it, it really accelerated digital adoption. And we know that a lot of our HCPs may have not been eager to connect, nor were our sales reps necessarily eager to leverage it as well. So you start to see that coming into play. And then what that really means is that the role of the rep is continuing to evolve from what it was before to where it's going is a bit different. So based on those changes, what is it that we're really looking to do? We need to be able to be in a position to start producing content that can be consumed virtually. And really what that means is that we're producing it in a way that it can be consumed by different channels, but also that it can be easily interchanged. I think it's important is the distribution and our ability to be able to do that quickly and as fast as possible. So those things put together really start to drive what COVID really is starting to mean for us. But we're not done yet anyway.
It's definitely a journey. I agree. We're not done yet. Absolutely. Marie, your thought.
Yeah, so first, I'm sorry. I have people that are speaking with a perfect accent, and I am French, so everyone knows that French people have a really bad accent in English. So please forgive me. So to answer your question, 10 years ago when I began my journey about trying to transform pharmaceutical industries and bring them into the journey of digitalization. Each year we were having something like, oh, this is the year where finally we are going to be digital. Oh, this is the year where finally people understand what digital is and how it is important for pharmaceutical industry. And every year I was having exactly the same feedback from all over the people, but finally no one was understanding how it was so important to go for digital. And I think finally today and COVID made the proof that digital was not a nice to have, but a must. And everyone has to rush into these changes, into this transformation, and digital don't comes only with content creation and online and omni-channel, but it comes also with agilization of all the processes inside the pharmaceutical industries. And this is right now the main problem that they can face is time to market of the products, time to market, let's say, product content products, so messages. So what from my standpoint COVID bring on the table is that we need to be able to go fast in creating straight contents that are really shaped for digital channels and that fit the real need of the customers that now are online and that have to switch from one channel to another channel really fast. So this is for me what COVID changed.
Yeah, and I think many of us can relate to the journey around our industry embracing digital, and so much of success is timing, and COVID offered us that timing. Moving on to our next question for the panelists. How can we improve our strategies and operational best practices to stand out from the clutter of busy marketing by creating relevant, engaging content? Lou, why don't you start us off with that?
Look at it in two dimensions. I look at it from the strategy itself, meaning the relevance, how relevant is the content that we're producing, the timeliness of the content, are we providing the content when it needs to be consumed? And that's a key component, and you can't underestimate that key of it. Also, look at it, the other dimension is the distribution dimension. And you look at how quickly can we distribute that content from its creation to its consumption in the channels that are really our customers are looking to engage with. And that becomes very. So when you start to look at that and you start to look at it, are they on equal footing? And I tend to say, hey, I can have very relevant content, but if I can't distribute the content to where it needs to be, I'm ineffective. I can also have the best distribution.
Okay, and Marie, your thoughts?
Okay, so I was for 10 years inside pharmaceutical industry trying to bring technologies inside the pharmaceutical industries and trying to help our marketers, our IT guys to understand that today the only way to proceed was to find a cutting edge technical solution, some startups that could change the rules of the game in implementing those content and let's say save lives, but not patients' lives, but save the life of our marketers, our MLRs, so medical and regulatory that are spending hours and hours in validation. So I was from the early beginning really convinced that a solution, technical solution that would automate everything could be the best solution to simplify the life of our marketing inside pharma, and that's why finally I'm now part of VISEVEN team, and I definitely believe that the only way to make better strategy and better operational practices is to free the time of the people that are doing this. So, and to free their time, we need to operate with the most intelligent tool that we can have, the smoother processes and the smoother integration to create the content and to publish the content. So that's why I think today one of the most, let's say, intelligent way of doing it is creating pieces of content that we call module. And when we have a module that is created and that have been validated on all the flow, we can reuse it and puzzle those modules into a concrete and engaging way where we are going to save time, save effort and money of the people, and let them engage themselves into what is the most important, their brain. So the how to think the best campaign on the market, and then all the rest is automated. So I truly believe that this is the way to create relevant, engaging contents.
Nick, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. And just to further on those points around relevancy and automation, I kind of liken it back to when I first started streaming content on Netflix and those types of platforms 10 plus years ago. I'd get done with a series and then be looking for something to watch. Nowadays, there's so much content; it's overwhelming. Did I really need to watch Tiger King? I don't know, but according to the way I view Netflix, thinks I should be watching Tiger King. And we're in this world today of data personalization that it's all about the data that about us and how it's helping inform the best communications. And I think that's where there's tons of potential for us to continue to take advantage of these things. We're using machine learning to help improve our ability to better anticipate what the customer's needs are, so we can be that much more relevant and timely. And that's I think the key of how we can break through the clutter, get this content that we know is engaging, but it's all really about connecting to that person at the right time, as we always have been trying to do. And I think nowadays it's much more possible to do so.
Yeah, definitely connecting at the right time and being in the moment when they're most ready to consume the information. I believe this is a critical opportunity for us, strategic but also operational perspective. Moving on, what data and analytics can we use to inform our decision making and create targeted messaging? And how have what we measure and how we define success evolved in recent years? So I'm going to ask Nick that question for his initial thoughts.
Yeah, sure. So as part of Fingerpaint, we have a platform called Shift Performance, and it's our ability to do this type of data-driven marketing. And the types of data that we're utilizing really spans the gamut from marketing and media engagement, the sales force, when we're talking about trying to connect with physicians using this Salesforce CRM data, and then even their RX activity data. All this can really help inform providing that next best content. But where we're now ramping it up a level is where we're leveraging machines to help also anticipate that and ingesting all different types of data sets, from what their lifestyle data might be on how they consume different types of products, can help characterize who somebody is based on other characters that we've built out, leveraging the data that we have. So I think data sets have become so available on our side that there's really no limit to what we can leverage. But there's without a doubt a process to take advantage here of how to maximize the data that most companies are sitting on.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's a shortage of data for sure. And Lou, your thoughts on that?
I always go back to big data, and we've been talking big data for a while now, and that's nothing new. But it's the ability to be able to synthesize that big data, which is new. And Nick pointed out, hey, when you're starting to leverage machine learning and aspects of that becomes important. But really, you start to look at what data do you have? Do you have interaction data? Okay, you start to leverage that of how they're interacting. Do I have third-party data that provides me an overarching view of in profile of who my customer is? And then based on that, how do I leverage that data to target, and not only target, but provide the right information that they're seeking for at that time? And you really look at that. Data is around, it's really the group that's going to be able to synthesize it and make sense out of it and turn it into something actionable, that it will become a competitive advantage for others. That they might get enamored in all the data and get lost in it. So there's a lot to go, and I think that's only going to continue to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, though, do you think sometimes the term big data lends itself to people getting lost in too much data rather than prioritizing what's most critical for that customer and when?
In big data, obviously a buzzword, but when I see data and requests for data, it's always, well, what are you going to do with it? Okay, and that should be on the answer of everything. If I'm getting this data or I'm collecting this data, how am I going to turn that into something actionable that is beneficial for my customer? Meaning, hey, I'm able to provide that relevant content, because it might be data around content use, or it might be relevant around the time in the patient journey that they're at, in order to be able to really need to use that information to make a decision.
Marie, what are your thoughts? Data.
Oh, I have so much thing to say about data. So first of all, for me, data is the heart of technology, because with the data, we don't have the 0 and the 1. I fully agree with both what Nick and Lou said. I would say that I have summarized omnichannel into 3 main buckets. The first is the channel itself, the second is the content, and the third is the data. And to make this machine ready and working, this factory being able to deliver, so we need to understand the interaction between channel, content, and data, and how are we going to use this data. But there is no data without interaction, as Lou said. So if we don't have people that are using the content, we are not going to produce data that will be enough relevant to analyze them and to take decision from them. So, and if we are not able to analyze the data and take decision, then we are not going able to action and orchestrate the correct channel that could be the most relevant for our clients. So everything here is coming from the, let's say, the client preference, the client understanding, and if we don't provide a content that is really suitable for him, then he will not provide data. But after that, yes, data, there is volume, there is velocity, there is also variety. So this means that those big data, it's not only a question of a number of data, it's also a question of quality of data and what data we are speaking about. And as Lou was telling, it's not only what we collect, but what we need to do from this data, the algorithm that we put behind, and how we dashboard the data to make, for example, the sales representative or the marketing to take the best decision. And to be able to do that, again, we need to go back to human. Yes, there is the machine, there is the data, but there is a use we do of the machine and the data. And if we have marketers and sales that are not ready or not mature for that, all the machine we are going to put in place make no sense. So from my side, I think, yes, data is a must, but change management and knowledge management is the key to make this data available and make the people that will read the data available to act from this data. And here we need also to think about the way we are going to make sense with this data, and the visualization is something really important. So what is important is finally in the chain of omnichannel is closing the loop, so closed loop marketing. And this makes sense because if we close the loop, we close the loop with the data and with dashboard, and we create the next content from this data. What I love in pharmaceutical industry is that we were the first one from all the industry to put inside the closed loop marketing not only the data but the content. So this means that it's a closed loop model, pharma closed loop model, where we have decided to put e-details, to put approved emails, to put all the data that we could have into the iPad, and those interactions to be collected, and also to about the key messages. What was the reaction, the quality of the reaction from those interactions, and by collecting them, then we can improve the way we are going to communicate the next time and engage the next time our clients. So I fully agree that that is imperative, but for me, again, content is king, even if context is queen.
Way to bring it back, Marie. Way to bring it back, Marie.
Yeah, Marie, but you hit on something also. You mentioned the change management. And how do the panelists feel about the role of culture in our challenge? And what percent is culture of our opportunity? And what percent is the actual content strategy and the operational excellence portion of it? I think that's another area that's discussed quite a bit in our industry. What are your thoughts on that?
So this is really a big challenge. Oh, sorry, it was, I thought it was asking, so it's you? Whose turn is it? Sorry, I didn't get it.
I think you should answer, Marie.
Hey, Marie, go ahead and take a crack at it. How's that?
Mine? Okay. So I definitely think that change management is the biggest challenge in this transformation. People especially in pharma industry are difficult to change because they were used to do their job really in the best way. They are really talented and skilled people, and it was working a lot. It was making a lot of money, so there was no reason to change. So going to them and putting in the table that the future of health would be something different that they were facing right now, it was one of the big challenge of what I call the digital evangelists. So my generation of people that arrived in the pharma with this idea to digitalize pharma. And the only way to do that was to embrace and show them how it could be dangerous not going to this way, by taking example from a big giant like Samsung, like Google, like a lot of them. And by doing that, we could make them understand that if they were not going to change, there will maybe fail the next challenges of the market. This is Darwin law. So by doing this, little by little, we made understand all the people that were at each places in the company, that they had an action to take to prepare themselves to this new situation. And because there is a lot of processes and a lot of regulation inside pharmaceutical industry, it is really difficult to make those changes. So we need to go back to the real life of the people, to understand what they are doing, what are their pain point, and begin from their pain point and show them the next stage, the target situation that will solve this pain point, and put digital and put omnichannel inside this journey to show them the future, and that the future will be better than what they are now, what they have now. And this is for me, from my experience, the only way to make them change, except one point, which is urgency. And this is what we are facing today with COVID. So this is another way to change. But honestly, this is the only way to proceed and to go quickly and to make them change their processes, was to show them the added value to go for such a journey. And this is the way we proceed, and this is the way we finally succeed in the changes we provided.
Great. Well, one last question for the group. It's been a very engaging discussion. What are best practices for developing processes for efficiently customizing content and quickly distributing important information? And what are unique considerations for pharma that we must consider and address? And I think some of this the panelists touched on. I know Lou, you did, and Marie and Nick, but just expanding on that further briefly. So
Sorry.
do you want to start us off, Lou, with that?
Sure. Yeah, I can take that, and kind of will wrap up everything that we had. So looking at best practices, I'm not sure our current best practices is going to be what we really need in the pharma industry. I think if we really want to be able to distribute that content quickly, and I know just where I'm at, urgency, I heard Marie said urgency, and urgency is one of those elements that are causing a shift where it may be more conducive to introduce more radical type of mechanisms to be able to create and move content. So when you look at it from the traditional sense of tactic by tactic, and that's how most pharmas do it, I create the content and then I push it well after the content should have probably been out there. Looking at a more radical approach, and that is modular content. Maybe when you hear modular content, you go, hey, we all do that, we're doing that. But looking at it from its truest sense, that, hey, it's a single source of truth coming right off of medical, and then being able to leverage that content and to be able to distribute it through multiple tactics. So you're no longer building tactic by tactic. What you are doing is building it with a much larger view, and you need to have a much larger understanding, and kind of keep that in the back of your head, because that all goes back to change management. And then the ability to be able to distribute that content becomes a lot more effective and efficient because of the way you're creating it from its onset. And that is a really key element to be able to do. So what do you gain with things like modular content? You gain efficiency. You absolutely gain efficiency. You gain effectiveness, and you also gain the ability to capture data at a level that you may have not been able to do before. So I talked about modular content and how grandiose and how beautiful that is. I see a bunch of head nods, and I think everybody's on board. Now comes in the change management component of it. When you look to introduce something like that, you are systematically changing the way marketers engage. You could be systematically changing the way reps are getting information as well. And that in itself becomes a overarching change management, as well as you start to look at medical, legal, and regulatory, which is also a mechanism where you need to get them comfortable with reviewing content with maybe not all the additional contextual information that may come along with it as it's assembled in a tactic level. So it's more radical. The more radical it is, the more change management will be required to be able to push it through, especially at a sustainable, scalable level.
Absolutely. And Nick, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Lou, I thought that was very well said. Just to maybe further expand on that would be some of the things that we're doing with that modular content is similar to how we've been able to address social media in our space. If you think about being a community manager and anticipating all the needs of what that community may be asking or posting, takes time and effort to strategize and think through what that could look like from a content perspective. But we don't use that in a lot of other places. So that modular content, if you can start to anticipate maybe how you can leverage that when you need to optimize a campaign across the omni-channel experience, I think that's where, to your point, that radical use of us being able to do things differently, be much more premeditated on how we're considering getting things into market, because we just rush to get things into market. It takes 3 months, and then you know last thing anybody wants to do is touch it again. But we have to. I mean, that's the beauty of the world we live in today. So hopefully, with us being more modularized and that change management and taking advantage of some of the things we've already built through these practices, I think we could get it there.
And Marie, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so fully agree that we need to think about the whole campaign from the beginning. So this means that we need to change the brain of our marketer. They don't have to think tactics per tactics, but they have to go strategical, and then have a big message that they want to share, then break down this message in key message, then turn them into pieces of content that are a standalone pieces of content, but that can be puzzled with other pieces of content. And then they have all the material to go fast, on the market and publish fast on the market if it is a pieces of content that is already validated and a pieces that it is true. So fully align on that. And so there is a lot of change management here, because we need to change the way of thinking strategies. But there is, let's say, a high-speed way and a big landscape of possibility and creative thinking, some places that haven't been explored before, and where we can do a lot with this. Just want also to say that for me there is also, how can I say, some other challenge that Pharma has to address. Yes, there is the pieces of content, there is the validation of the content, but there is also the how do I enable my sales reps to use the remote control and make them accountable and reliable in choosing which content in which channel at which moment for which customer. So, and here there is also something that we have to change. This is the role of the sales, which became finally a channel orchestrator. So he's just pushing the button, channel 1, channel 2, and he's deciding for the customer what film, what movie in Netflix he will see. And for that, we need to enable them to better understand the feedback that we are getting from the data. And
Marie,
here there is a big problem, which is that.
Yeah, no, thank
Sorry?
you. Excellent perspective there. I'm going to go to the audience's questions now, since we've got some really great questions. And all of you, Marie, everyone can expand on their thoughts through these questions. What are the panel's thoughts regarding which HCP journeys they found the most success with? I think that's a great question. Lots of discussion about that in the industry. Thoughts? How about Nick? Briefly, your thoughts on it. I'll give that to Nick, and then we have some other questions for the panelists.
The best journey, I don't know if I completely understand the question, but I will say that when we are tailoring the communications, what we've seen is being able to get somebody from understanding if they've been educated about the brand and moving them to trial list takes some considerable amounts of understanding the data they're consuming and how we can try and serve up the most key information to handle their objections, just like a sales rep would be doing. So we've seen a lot of success in being able to move them from that stage from educated to then finally trialing a new prescriber.
Yeah, thank you. Just briefly add, journeys are helpful to understand, but they can also be complicated. Our customer isn't always linear. And I think that's also something we have to take into account, during our planning, being flexible in our thinking too. This is a question for you, Lou. How do you define big data versus alternatives? And what specific action steps have you taken with this to become an action or become a competitive advantage? Can you give an example? I know you referenced big data earlier.
What I would leverage with big data is almost what I would say is what's our next best action. Okay, there's an interaction that would have occurred within the marketplace. Say, hey, my sales rep went in and had a conversation with an HCP. Data tells us that, you know what, the next best action, contrary to maybe what people might think, might be to send a home office email. You may not think that from just a understanding perspective, that would be the next thing to do. But, the data could point in it, and I've seen where it has that, hey, that was exactly the next best thing to do, to send out that home office email. And then what does that trigger? So you start to look at data, starts to give you insight into what you can do next. And then also it gives you insight into be able to anticipate maybe the type of information that may be needed. So that's the type of actionable. So I heard journeys and I heard things along that line. So looking at it, break down your journey. What is the best next interaction? Where before what Pharma would do, and we still do, we're all guilty of it. I'll send out emails, I'll send out reps, I'll send out this, I'll send out that. But what happens if you begin to orchestrate that and find that orchestration has a significant more of an impact than that, and also that orchestration causes down on the clutter. It reduces the overhead that it takes to do all that. So you're more pinpointing, and I think it goes back to Nick. What was it you said about Netflix? Hey, how is it that they know that that's the movie that you may like? And instead of showering you with thousands of movies, it more dials into what you're anticipating or what you're thinking.
And I think that's the future, being ahead of our customers and making recommendations. Briefly, modular content is a trend now. Any thoughts on that? I know, Marie, you spoke on that. You want to briefly expand on that a bit?
Just one comment about the journey. I think the best journey is the one that will create the trust in between the client and the brand. So we need to be smooth and to give the correct content at the correct moment, and not to overkill our communication with our customers. So it's really important to be smooth and to create the correct algorithm. And for me, the owner of this algorithm is the sales rep. It's not the machine. And at the end, it's the sales rep that will take the decision. So we can help him, but we do not have to make the job for him. And we can help him by giving him the time to study this data and to decide which content I will be the sales manager. Thanks to the content I will have and the dashboard of the content I will have, I will be able to identify what pieces of content it's really relevant for my customer for this moment. So if the pieces of content are correctly set up, then as a sales manager, I can choose the pieces of content that are the more relevant for the moment I will push the button to give it to my client. And this is the strength of the modular approach. It is not just a brand word or a buzzword or a new trend. It is not a new trend. It is really the basics of a new cutting edge way of providing content, because I give all the power to my sales to define what is the best food that he could give to his HCP when the HCP need it. So it is need driven, not it's demand driven and not offer driven. This make a change in the way we offer the messages, and then we can choose what is the more relevant at the correct moment. This is what I think about modular content. Does I answer the question?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks so much, Marie. And just how do you assess if the data is of high quality? This is also something that emerges a lot with our industry, the data purity, different data sources. I'm going to give that to you, Lou, since you referred to big data earlier. How do you approach that? How do you assess if data is of high quality?
But now the way we're looking at assessing data is the purity of it. And it starts at a very fundamental baseline is, are we calling all the same things the same names? And so you can start to compare and contrast. And I'm thinking more in the omni-channel experience. So if I'm calling an interaction, is it the same interaction I'm having at my call center? Is it the same interaction? So I can start to understand that. Data purity is key. I mean, the more pure your data is, the better you're going to be able to target. But we don't all start with pure data. So how do you evolve that over time? And I think in the future, what you'll start to see is, things like machine learning that will be able to start to break through all those data elements that may not be as relevant or may be noise in the data area, and start to be able to synthesize and get that to quicker. But it's a great question, and it's relevant, and it'll be relevant in 5 years. It'll be relevant in 10 years as it was relevant 5 years ago. It's a challenge for all of us.
As we wrap up, I'm going to ask all the panelists.
Would like to add something.
In one, yes. Okay. Yes. Briefly.
Sorry. Really briefly. I think data purity, and not only data purity, but data storing, it's something that today is really a big problem in pharmaceutical company because of this technical depth that they have regarding IT and infrastructure. So this is a key success factor of it that will lead omnichannel. They really need to clean their databases, to have a data lake that is fully available and that is simple, with plugs that are simple. If I have one technical, let's say IT advices to give right now, not about content but about IT stuff, please guys, look at your data, look at your database, cleanse them, and have something that can be reusable, whatever the system you are going to plug into your database. Please do it.
Absolutely, Marie, so critical. I'm just going to ask the panelists for one final thought. If you had to summarize in one term, what is the future? Where are we headed? What's our most critical priority? If you had to summarize it in one thing, what would that be that's most critical to our success in this area? Nick?
I would say it's the data-driven personalization, so that we're going to be that much more specific, and let's leverage all this great information that we have in our fingertips.
Mm-hmm. And Lou, that final thought of wisdom.
And putting those two together will be very, very powerful.
And Marie, your final pearl for us.
Yeah, as digital leader, what we need to do is give sense to what is happening today.
Mm-hmm. Great. We definitely have an exciting opportunity ahead of us. And thanks to all the panelists. for this thought-provoking discussion. And thank you to all that joined us for this discussion.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, guys, listening.